learn from talking to the children, Ukrainian children from those regions?
Well, I mean, it's heartbreaking because the only schooling is Russian schooling. Obviously teaching the Russian language, Putin's view of history, and effectively indoctrination. And people can quibble with that term, but it's Putin-esque indoctrination schools. And any children or families that do not want that effectively have to hide and not go out. And I spoke to children and parents who'd had school friends, for instance, the Russians set up in 22 and 23 summer camps for the children of some of the areas that have been occupied, and the children went off to the camps and then they didn't come back. But they were just stolen. I mean, it's thought that around 20,000 Ukrainian children have been stolen in this fashion. That's not a small thing. It's not got very much attention, but yes, I mean, children who would hide whenever the Russian troops came to the door. One teenage boy who described to me how when his mother was out, a woman came round to the house, knocked on the door, and gave him his papers and said that he had to attend the next week to sign up for the Russian army. This is not good. And that's obviously what life is like for thousands of people behind the Russian lines in Ukraine. I just have it in mind when people say things like, well, obviously these regions have to be handed over. It's very, very hard if you're Ukrainian to concede to that.
Yeah, and even if they are as part of the negotiation handed over, I think it'll probably be generations or never that could be accepted by Ukrainian people.
Absolutely, and I would have thought never.
What do we know about this kidnapping of children? The stories of the thousands of children that the Russian forces kidnapped?
Some of them were in orphanages in eastern Ukraine, not all by any means, but some were. And it's a very complicated story, actually, because many children were taken from their families. Many, the Russians said, well, look at these Ukrainians, they don't even look after their children, therefore we will look after them. And I was recently, when I was there, looking into this story because it's a very interesting question as to why it hasn't had more attention. One thinks of, for instance, the abduction of the Chibok schoolgirls some 12 years ago now in northern Nigeria, and the appalling abduction of 300 girls by Boko Haram completely gained the world's attention. And I was very interested into why the Ukrainian children who'd been taken by the Russians had not gained similar attention. There's a slight similarity with the war in Israel, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But I do think that one reason is that they were effectively hostages, and the Ukrainians knew. This is my estimation of the terrain on it, is that the Ukrainians knew that if they made a great deal about this, or as it were, more than they did, that the children would effectively be the most effective bargaining chip. And I do think there's considerable truth in that, because if you look at, for instance, the way in which pressure has been put on the Israeli government by the Israeli population about the kidnapped Israelis, you'll see that it's a pretty effective tactic for any totalitarian regime or terrorist group to operate in a way that means that the population of the country you're attacking pressure their government to do something in terms of concession. It's a very effective tool. And I think that story was partly played down, not just outside of Ukraine, but also within Ukraine, partly for that reason.